Christmas night. Wind cuts through thermal gear like razors, snow falling in thick curtains across the dead valley. A SEAL team pinned deep in hostile territory. Ammunition running critical. Communications degrading. Blood freezing on glove fabric. The team leader grips the radio handset, transmitting one final signal, a desperate distress call that echoes once, twice, then dissolves into static. No response. Then, a woman's voice, low and eerily calm, breaks through on a secondary frequency. "I hear you. Hold your fire. Christmas isn't over yet." In the darkness, a forgotten sniper has awakened. The operation brief had called it routine reconnaissance. Lieutenant Commander Brett Harlow should have known better after 17 years in the teams. Nothing was routine when the mission started on December 23rd and required a 72-hour observation window. The valley stretched below their position like a frozen wound in the earth. Intelligence had tagged it as a supply route for weapons shipments crossing the border. 4 days of watching, recording patterns, then extraction by helicopter on Christmas morning. Simple. Watcher 1, this is Watcher 3. Movement, Northwest Ridge, 400 meters. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Webb's voice came through the tactical net, professional and controlled. Harlow adjusted his night vision, scanning the indicated sector. 6 figures moving in tactical formation. Not insurgents stumbling through the snow. These moved like trained soldiers. "I count 6. Armed, professional spacing." Harlow keyed his radio. "All units, weapons hold. Let them pass." The snow had started falling 3 hours after sunset, heavier than forecast. The white particles created a grainy interference in the night vision, turning the world into a green blizzard. Weather that provided concealment but also blinded them. Watcher 4, checking in. "I've got movement on the southern approach to 12, maybe 15. That was Chief Petty Officer Ryan Garrett, positioned 300 meters downslope with half the team." Harlow's jaw tightened. Movement from 2 directions. Coordinated. His gut twisted with the recognition that comes before the brain catches up. "Watcher 2, you seeing this?" he asked his second in command. "Yeah, boss." Lieutenant J.G. Nathan Cross crouched beside him, weapon ready. This isn't random patrol. The explosion came without warning. The UAV providing their aerial surveillance disappeared in a flash of light 2,000 feet above them. The shockwave followed seconds later, a dull thump that rattled teeth. "Contact! Contact!" Webb's voice cracked across the net, taking fire from the ridge, multiple positions. The valley erupted. Muzzle flashes sparked from elevations they hadn't even identified as threats. The reconnaissance position became a kill zone in heartbeats. "All units, fall back to Rally Point Delta," Harlow shouted into his radio. "Execute withdrawal protocol, now." But the withdrawal routes they'd scouted during infiltration were already compromised. Red tracers cut through the snow, searching for flesh. The sound of automatic weapons fire echoed and re-echoed off the valley walls, making it impossible to count enemy positions. Chief Garrett's voice cut through the chaos. "Watcher 1, southern route is blocked. I repeat, withdrawal route is blocked. We need alternate extraction." Harlow's mind raced through options. They'd planned for enemy contact, but not a full ambush with this level of coordination. Not on Christmas Eve. Copy, Watcher 4. Moving to Rally Point Echo, 700 meters northeast. Rally Point Echo was the contingency position, a shallow ravine that offered some cover but backed against a cliff face, a defensive position, not an escape route. If they got pinned there, it became a tomb. The team moved in bounds, one element covering while the other repositioned. Professional, disciplined, even as rounds cracked past their heads, but every movement cost them ammunition they couldn't replace. Petty Officer Second Class Derek Mills took a round through his shoulder 30 meters from Rally Point Echo. He went down hard, weapon clattering on rock. Webb grabbed him, dragging him the rest of the way while Cross laid down covering fire that chewed through half a magazine in seconds. They tumbled into the ravine as mortar rounds began dropping. Whoever had planned this ambush had real artillery support. "Mills is hit bad," Webb shouted, already tearing open the medical kit. "Entry and exit, but he's losing blood fast." Harlow did the math. 6 men, 1 seriously wounded, maybe 300 rounds of ammunition total. No air support, the UAV was gone, and the weather had grounded the extraction helicopter at the forward operating base. Radio communication degraded by the terrain and the snow. They were alone. "Get Mills stabilized," Harlow ordered. "Cross, you and Webb set security. Garrett, count ammunition." The chief moved among the team, collecting magazines, doing the grim arithmetic of survival. 240 rounds total. "Boss, maybe 8 grenades. Mills is carrying weight we can't use." Harlow pulled out his radio, switching to the emergency frequency, the one they weren't supposed to use except for catastrophic scenarios. This qualified, but the static that answered his transmission held no promise. The signal strength meter on the radio barely flickered. Harlow adjusted the antenna, trying different angles, searching for any bounce that might carry their position to the operations center, 90 kilometers away. "Shadow Main. Shadow Main. This is Watcher 1. Emergency traffic." He kept his voice level, professional, as if he were ordering coffee instead of screaming for help into a void. 6 personnel. 1 urgent surgical. Position compromised. Request immediate extraction. Static. Just the hiss and crackle of electromagnetic noise bouncing off mountains and snow. "Shadow Main. Watcher 1. How copy?" "Nothing." "Boss, they're moving up." Cross pointed to the thermal scope mounted on his rifle. 2 squads. Eastern approach. They're taking their time, setting up a perimeter. The enemy wasn't rushing. They didn't need to. They had time, ammunition, and numbers. The SEALs had none of those things. Garrett crouched beside Harlow. "We send that distress call. They'll triangulate our position in minutes." "They already know our position." Harlow gestured at the incoming forces. "Question is whether anyone friendly hears us first." Webb looked up from treating Mills. "What about the satellite phone?" "Destroyed when the UAV went down. That explosion took out the relay." The wind shifted, carrying voices speaking in a language Harlow didn't need to understand, orders being given, positions being coordinated. Mills groaned, consciousness returning along with pain. "How bad?" he asked through clenched teeth. "You'll make it," Webb lied smoothly. "Just need to keep pressure on it." They all knew Mills wouldn't make it without a surgical team. Maybe not even then, if they didn't evacuate in the next hour. Harlow made the decision. He keyed the radio again, this time transmitting on multiple frequencies, burning through battery power they'd need later. Any station. This is Watcher 1 declaring emergency. 6 U.S. military personnel pinned in hostile territory. 1 urgent surgical. Position follows. November 3-4, Echo 7-2, elevation 2150 meters. Request immediate assistance. How copy? He released the transmit button. Static answered. Any station. Watcher 1. If you can hear this transmission but cannot respond, we are continuing this broadcast on this frequency. Key your microphone twice to acknowledge. Seconds stretched. The snow kept falling. Mills's breathing had gone shallow and rapid. "It's Christmas Eve," Cross said quietly. "Nobody's monitoring emergency channels. Everyone stood down except the duty officer." "Someone's always listening," Harlow said, but his voice carried no conviction. He transmitted again, and again, each time burning more battery, each time sending their position into the darkness like a message in a bottle thrown into an ocean. Minutes passed. The enemy forces continued their methodical advance, professional, patient. They knew the SEALs weren't going anywhere. "Boss." Garrett's voice was soft. "We need to discuss." "No," Harlow cut him off. "We're not discussing that." Everyone knew what Garrett meant. The protocol when capture was imminent, the final option that ensured nothing fell into enemy hands, not equipment, not intelligence, not bodies. "Christmas miracle doesn't come for guys like us," Webb said, surprising everyone. Webb was usually the optimist. "We're the ones who deliver miracles. Nobody delivers them to us." Harlow was about to respond when the radio crackled. Not static, not interference. A voice. The transmission lasted 3 seconds. A woman's voice, speaking with unnatural calm. "Watcher 1. Adjust to frequency 7.3 megahertz. Single sideband. Now." Then silence. The team stared at each other. Harlow's finger hovered over the frequency dial. "Could be enemy psychological operations," Garrett said. "Get us to break radio silence, track our transmission." "We've already been transmitting," Cross pointed out. "They know where we are." "Could be a honey trap," Webb shook his head. Female voice, offers help, leads us into an ambush. We're already in an ambush. Harlow turned the frequency dial to 7.3 MHz and switched to single sideband mode, an older transmission method that could bounce signals off the ionosphere, extending range dramatically but requiring more sophisticated equipment. He keyed the microphone. Station calling Watcher 1, identify yourself. The response came immediately. Same woman's voice, but clearer now on the different frequency. No call sign, no unit designation, just coordinates. November 3, 4.027. Echo 7, 2.015. Elevation 2158 meters. Harlow pulled out his map, plotting the coordinates. His blood chilled. Those coordinates placed them exactly where they were, not within 100 meters, not within 10 meters. Exactly where they sat in this ravine. Who is this? He demanded. The person who's going to keep you alive. Her voice carried no emotion, just statement of fact. Enemy forces are advancing in 3 groups, 22 personnel total. Eastern approach has 8. Northern approach has 7. 7 more circling to cut off western withdrawal. You have approximately 11 minutes before they're close enough to employ grenades effectively. Cross was staring at his thermal scope. She's right about the numbers. I count 8 on the eastern approach, exact. How are you seeing this? Harlow asked into the radio. Night vision, thermal imaging, and 17 years of practice. That was the first hint of personality in her voice, a dry edge that might have been humor or might have been warning. I need you to turn off every light source. No IR lasers, no illuminators, no flashlights. When I tell you to take cover, you drop immediately. No questions, no hesitation. Understood? Negative, not understood. We don't take orders from unidentified. The crack of a rifle shot interrupted him. Not close, far away, but even through the snow and wind, Harlow heard it, a deep, heavy report that echoed across the valley. 3 seconds later, one of the approaching figures on the eastern slope simply dropped. No cry, no dramatic fall. One moment upright, the next moment gone. Webb was looking through his spotting scope. Holy shit, 800 meters. Through this snow, headshot. Turn off your lights, the woman's voice repeated. Now, this time, Harlow didn't argue. He hand-signaled the team, and darkness fell complete over their position. Even the small chemical glow sticks they'd been using for medical treatment went into pockets. Good, she said. The eastern group is confused. They're trying to determine where the shot came from. 3 of them are advancing to check on their fallen. Maintain absolute silence. Another shot. Another figure dropped. This time, Harlow caught it through his night vision. A man simply erasing from existence, as if a god had reached down and removed him from reality. 2 down, the woman said, voice unchanged. The others are going to ground. They'll call for support. You have maybe 5 minutes before they coordinate a response. Who are you? Harlow asked again. Silence for a moment. Then, someone they'd rather forget existed. Someone who's very good at her job, and someone who's going to kill anyone who tries to harm you tonight. The northern approach erupted in gunfire, panicked, undisciplined, shooting at shadows. The enemy knew they were being hunted, but couldn't identify the hunter. They're firing blind, she said, wasting ammunition. Good. When you hear my signal 3 rapid shots, I need you to move northwest, exactly 200 meters, to a cluster of large rocks. There's better cover there, and it gives me cleaner lines of fire. Can you move your wounded? Affirmative, Harlow said. But we don't. Trust is earned, she interrupted. I understand. So, watch this. 3 shots rang out in rapid succession, crack, crack, crack. 3 different directions. 3 more figures dropped on 3 different approaches. The enemy broke. Discipline shattered under the realization that an invisible force was systematically destroying them. Some retreated, others dove for cover. Chaos rippled through their careful coordination. Move now, she said. Northwest, 200 meters. I'll cover you. Harlow made the decision. Garrett, Webb, get Mills up. Cross, your rear security. We're moving. They lifted Mills between them, half carrying, half dragging him through the snow. Every step felt like walking through a spotlight, waiting for bullets to find them. But every time enemy muzzle flashes sparked, another distant rifle shot answered. And each time, someone stopped shooting back. They reached the rock cluster in 90 seconds. Better cover, just as she'd promised. a natural fortress of boulders that blocked angles of attack. "Set security," Harlow ordered, then keyed his radio. "We're in position. Now tell me who you are." "I'm the reason you're going to see Christmas morning," she said. "That's all you need to know tonight." But Harlow needed to know more. Because he'd heard that rifle, the range, the precision, the cold efficiency. He'd only known one sniper who could shoot like that, and she'd been declared killed in action 3 years ago. Her name had been Captain Juliet Brennan, though she'd stopped using rank after the disavowal. 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days since the mission that officially never happened. The one where her 12-person special operations element walked into what intelligence swore was an abandoned compound. The one where intelligence was catastrophically wrong. She'd been the only one to walk out. Not because she was better, not because she was luckier, because she'd been positioned 300 meters away, providing overwatch, watching through her scope as her entire team was systematically executed after they'd surrendered. She'd killed 14 enemy combatants that night, methodical, precise, 1 round per target. But the distance and darkness meant she couldn't reach them all before her teammates died. The after-action review had been swift and surgical. The mission had never existed. The team had never existed. Captain Juliet Brennan's service record was sealed, then erased, then disappeared entirely from military databases. They'd offered her a medical discharge with full benefits, a generous pension, counseling, all the pieces to rebuild a civilian life. She'd refused, walked away from the discharge papers unsigned, disappeared into the same shadow world that had consumed the memory of her team. For 3 years, she'd worked the margins. Missions too sensitive for official channels, targets too problematic for acknowledged operations. No rank, no unit designation, no backup. Just coordinates, objectives, and the understanding that success meant she continued to exist in the files marked asset available for off-book operations. She'd been in the mountains for 6 weeks, tracking a high-value target through a supply network that wound through 5 countries. Patient work, observation, pattern analysis, no rushed shots. Then, on Christmas Eve, monitoring radio frequencies out of habit, a skill that kept operators alive, she'd heard the distress call. American voices. Desperate. Professional to the end, but desperate. She'd told herself it wasn't her problem. She had a mission, an objective. Walking away from that to chase a rescue operation risked everything she'd rebuilt in the shadows. Then she'd heard the team leader's voice crack, just slightly, when he'd transmitted the coordinates a 3rd time to silence. That tiny break in professional composure. The moment when hope started dying. She knew that sound. She'd made that sound 3 years ago, calling for extraction that never came, watching through her scope as her team bled out in the snow. So she'd broken operational security, used encryption equipment she shouldn't possess, accessed satellite feeds she wasn't authorized to see, triangulated the SEAL team's position, and identified the enemy force staging for the kill. Then she'd loaded her rifle, checked her ammunition count, 48 rounds in magazines, 12 in loose carry, and moved toward the sound of men dying on Christmas Eve. The shot calculations required compensating for wind, temperature, humidity, the Coriolis effect at this latitude, and the dense snowfall degrading ballistic performance. 800 meters in these conditions was at the edge of possible. She'd made the shot anyway, and the next one, and all the ones after that. Not for redemption. She'd stopped believing in redemption. Not for country. They'd made it clear she was disposable. Because there were men down there who still believed in extraction, who still thought someone gave a damn whether they lived or died. And maybe, just for tonight, someone should prove them right. She shifted position after the 5th shot, relocating 200 meters west to a rocky outcrop that provided better angles. The enemy was adapting, keeping to cover, moving more carefully. Good. Caution slowed them down, bought the SEALs time. She settled behind her rifle, cheek pressed to the stock, breathing controlled. Through the scope, thermal signatures bloomed white against the cold blue background. 7 targets visible, 15 more somewhere in the terrain. Watcher 1, she transmitted. Status of your wounded? Brief pause, then the team leader's voice, critical but stable. He needs evacuation within 4 hours or we lose him. 4 hours. She checked her ammunition count again. 43 rounds remaining after the confirmed kills. 22 confirmed enemy personnel, -5 killed, 17 active threats. The math was ugly but survivable. Understood, she said. I'm going to thin their numbers. Every target I drop, your odds improve. Stay in that rock cluster. Don't return fire unless they're within 50 meters. Your muzzle flashes give away position. Mine don't. I'm too far away. Copy, he said. Then, after hesitation, you know exactly how to run this kind of operation. I've done it before, she said simply. What she didn't say. Last time, everyone died anyway. This time, I have more ammunition. The enemy commander was smart. After losing 5 soldiers to an invisible sniper, he'd pulled his forces back, consolidated, and stopped moving in the open. They'd found covered positions and settled in, turning the hunt into a siege. But sieges required patience. And patience required not getting shot. Juliet watched through her scope as they tried to establish defensive positions. One fighter moved between cover points too quickly, crossing a gap in what he thought was a blind spot. She compensated for a 3-meter-per-second crosswind, elevated slightly for the range, and pressed the trigger. The rifle's recoil was familiar and comforting. Through the scope, she watched the target drop. One down, Eastern Cluster, she transmitted to the SEALs. They're going to respond with suppressing fire in approximately 5 seconds. Stay low. The enemy opened up, pouring rounds into the hillside where they thought the shot originated. Wasted ammunition into empty terrain. She'd moved immediately after firing, already setting up 200 meters south. Watcher 1, you seeing the northern position? She asked. 3 personnel behind the fallen tree? Affirmative, the team leader responded. We have visual. When I engage the eastern group again, the northern position is going to shift to get a better angle on your location. The one on the left will move first. When he does, you'll have about a 2-second window where his head clears the log. If you have a precision rifle, that's your shot. Silence for a moment. Then, copy. We'll take it. She lined up on the eastern group again. Different target this time, one of the smarter ones who'd been directing the others. Leadership kill. Those rattled enemy units more than random casualties. The shot was cleaner this time. Closer range, better angle. The target dropped without sound. And just as she'd predicted, the northern position shifted. She watched through her scope as one fighter rose slightly, moving to new cover. The crack of a precision rifle echoed from the SEAL position. The fighter's head snapped back. Good shot, Watcher 1, she transmitted. You just bought yourself some breathing room. Who trained you? The team leader asked. Your tactics are JSOC level. Someone who believed in me once, she said. Long time ago. The battle settled into a rhythm. She'd identify targets, calculate angles, press the trigger. The enemy would respond with panicked fire at empty positions. She'd relocate. Repeat. Each shot reduced the enemy's numbers. Each kill increased their fear. Fear made people make mistakes. By the time her ammunition count dropped to 31 rounds, the enemy had lost 11 fighters. The mathematics of survival had shifted dramatically. But mathematics didn't account for everything. Watcher 1, be advised, she transmitted. The enemy is changing tactics. They've stopped trying to advance. They're setting up for indirect fire. Do you see the 2-person team on the high ridge, northwest? Negative, we don't have that angle. They're setting up a mortar, probably 60 millimeter. Once they have your range, they'll drop rounds into that rock cluster until they hit something. The team leader's voice tightened. Can you reach them from your position? She calculated the range. 1,400 meters. Uphill. Through snow, wind gusting unpredictably. It's at the edge of my envelope, she admitted. Maybe 60% probability of hit. What happens if you miss? They see my muzzle flash, calculate my position, and I become the target instead of you. Silence on the radio. She could imagine the calculations running through his head. Risk 1 to save 6. The terrible mathematics of command. Negative, he said finally. Don't take the shot. We'll deal with the mortar. With what? She asked. You have fragmentation grenades. Wrong tool for that range. By the time you maneuver close enough to employ them, they'll have dropped rounds on your position. That's not your problem. Actually, she said, settling behind her rifle, tonight it is. She blocked out everything except the scope picture. The mortar team was moving with trained efficiency, one man preparing the tube, the other preparing rounds. They had maybe 45 seconds before the first round went downrange. 1,400 meters. The bullet would drop nearly 6 meters over that distance. Wind would push it laterally another meter or more. The snow created a particle curtain that would rob the bullet of velocity and stability. Through the scope, she found the assistant gunner, the one handling the mortar rounds. If she killed the gunner, the assistant could still fire. But if she killed the assistant first, the gunner had to do everything alone. Slower, bought more time. She controlled her breathing. In, out. Heart rate slowing. The world narrowing to a single point of focus. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. For 2.5 seconds, the bullet traveled through darkness and snow. 2.5 seconds where physics and wind and a dozen variables fought against precision. Through the scope, she watched the assistant gunner stagger, then collapse. The gunner looked at his partner, confused, started to reach for the radio. She'd already worked the bolt, chambering a fresh round. Second shot, same calculations. The gunner dropped beside his assistant. Mortar team neutralized, she transmitted. But we have a problem. What problem? I just fired 2 shots from an exposed position at extreme range. They're going to triangulate my location based on the sound. I'm about to have company. Through her scope, she could already see it happening. Enemy forces pivoting, reorienting toward her hill. They'd identified the threat. The hunter had become the hunted. Juliet broke down her position in 15 seconds. Rifle slung, equipment packed, moving before the enemy could coordinate fire on her location. But moving meant abandoning the perfect overwatch position, meant losing the elevation advantage, meant the seals were more exposed. Watcher 1. I'm relocating to lower ground, she transmitted while running in a crouch through the snow. You'll have approximately 5 minutes without sniper cover. Recommend maximum defensive posture. Copy. The team leader's voice was tight. We're tracking movement toward your last position. 6, maybe 7 personnel. 7. She'd killed 11 and they'd killed 1 more. That meant 9 enemy fighters remained in other positions. 16 total still active. And now those 16 knew roughly where she was. She slid into a shallow depression behind a cluster of wind-twisted trees. Poor cover but the best available. From here, she couldn't see the seal position directly, couldn't provide overwatch fire. The enemy hit her old position with everything they had. Tracers and regular rounds chewed into the rocks where she'd been lying 60 seconds earlier. If she'd hesitated, if she'd tried to get 1 more shot off, she'd be dead. Watcher 1, this is Watcher 4. A different voice on the radio, the SEAL chief. Our wounded is deteriorating, pulse is thready, blood pressure dropping. He needs surgical intervention soon, or he's not going to make it. Juliet checked her watch. 3 hours and 17 minutes since the initial ambush. The wounded SEAL might have another hour, maybe. Then they'd be carrying a corpse. She keyed her radio. Watcher 1, I'm pinned down temporarily. Can you raise anyone on long-range comms? Get a helicopter inbound? Negative. Every time we transmit, they triangulate us. We're already marked. Broadcasting continuously would be suicide. Then we need to reduce their numbers fast. Get them disorganized enough that they can't coordinate fire on an extraction bird. Agreed. But you're pinned, we're pinned. How do we? The mortar round interrupted him. It screamed out of the darkness and impacted 50 meters from the SEAL position, showering the rocks with shrapnel and snow. Contact! Contact! Someone yelled. Mortar fire! Juliet's jaw clenched. She'd killed the team she'd seen, but the enemy had another mortar somewhere, the one she hadn't seen. A second round dropped, closer this time, 40 meters. Watcher 1, you need to move, she transmitted. They're walking rounds onto your position. Next one's going to be right on top of you. We move. We expose ourselves to direct fire. You stay. The next mortar round kills you all. The third round hit the rocks directly. The explosion was a hammer blow against her eardrums, even from hundreds of meters away. Rock fragments became shrapnel. Snow became smoke. Watcher 1. Report. She shouted into the radio. Static. Watcher 1. Report status. More static. Then, finally, a voice ragged, coughing. We're alive. Barely. Cross is hit. Fragment through the leg. Mills is unconscious. We're combat ineffective. 8 hours ago. This had been an elite SEAL team. Now they were 2 effective fighters, 2 wounded, and 2 more barely holding on, and she was alone, hundreds of meters away, with 28 rounds of ammunition against 16 enemy combatants who knew where both positions were. The mathematics had become impossible. She keyed her radio one more time. "Watcher 1, I'm coming to you." "Negative. You move across that terrain, they'll cut you down. If I don't move, you're dead in 5 minutes. Your choice to make." Silence. Then, "We don't even know who you are." "Tonight?" She chambered around, checked her remaining magazines. "Tonight I'm the only thing standing between you and body bags. That's all you need to know." She started moving before he could argue. Down the slope, through the snow, toward the sound of dying men. Because 3 years ago, she'd watched her team die from 300 meters away. Unable to reach them, unable to save them. Not again. Never again. Even if it meant dying alongside them. The approach took 12 minutes of movement that felt like hours. Every shadow could hide an enemy fighter. Every sound could be the last thing she'd hear. But she'd been trained by the best, knew how to use terrain, how to move in darkness, how to become part of the landscape until she chose to reveal herself. The SEAL position was worse than she'd expected. The mortar had shattered the rock cluster, turning their fortress into a debris field. Mills was unconscious, face gray with blood loss. Cross had a tourniquet on his leg but was still functional. The other 4 were trying to maintain a perimeter with ammunition running critically low. She materialized out of the darkness like a ghost, rifle up, scanning for threats. 4 weapons swung toward her before recognition set in. "Hold fire!" the team leader shouted. "Friendly!" Juliet slid into the position, immediately assessing the situation. 2 urgent surgical casualties. 4 effective fighters, but exhausted and nearly out of ammunition. Maybe 70 rounds total between all of them. The team leader stared at her. Even through the face camouflage and tactical gear, she could see his expression shift from relief to confusion to shocked recognition. "No," he whispered. "You're dead," the file said. "The file says a lot of things." She handed him 2 of her magazines, 30 rounds. "Make them count." He took the ammunition automatically, still staring. "Captain Brennan, they said you were KIA 3 years ago." "They say a lot of things." She turned to the chief. "Casualty status?" Chief Garrett had been in the special operations community long enough to recognize a legend. "Mills needs surgery within the hour. Cross can fight but he's slowing down. The rest of us are operational, but running on fumes." She nodded, pulling out her rangefinder and scanning the surrounding terrain. 16 enemy fighters. Maybe 8 of them were close enough to storm the position. The others were hanging back, letting the mortar do the work. "Where's the mortar?" she asked. "Northwest Ridge," the team leader said. "Maybe 800 meters. We can't reach it." "I can." She found the position through her scope. 2-man team, different from the first. They'd learned position themselves in a depression that provided excellent cover. The math was ugly. 1,200 meters, indirect fire position, limited exposure, but they had to be stopped. "I need you to draw their attention," she said to the team leader. "When I tell you, light them up. Full automatic. Every weapon. Make them think you're trying to break out to the west. That'll expose us completely. For 15 seconds. Then I drop the mortar team, and you're in cover before they can respond." He studied her face. 3 years ago, Captain Juliet Brennan had been one of the best snipers in U.S. military history. Then she died, officially. Unofficially, apparently, she'd become something else entirely. "You missed that shot," he said quietly. "We're all dead." "I don't miss, not arrogance, just fact." She positioned herself at the edge of the rock cluster, finding a stable shooting position, 1,200 meters through snow and wind at a target barely exposed, the kind of shot that made or broke reputations. "On my mark," she said. 3, 2, 1, execute. The SEALs opened fire in a coordinated burst. Tracers streaked into the darkness, creating a wall of light and sound that drew every eye in the valley, including the mortar team. Through her scope, she watched the assistant gunner lean out to observe the SEAL position, calculating coordinates for the next fire mission. 1 second of exposure. That's all she needed. The rifle kicked. The shot was true. The assistant gunner dropped. She'd already worked the bolt. The gunner was reaching for the radio, starting to call for support. Second shot. Clean hit. "Cease fire!" she shouted. "Get down!" The SEALs dropped into cover as return fire slashed through the space they'd just occupied. But without the mortar, it was just small arms fire. Harassment, not lethal. The team leader was staring at her again. "How are you even real?" She checked her ammunition. 24 rounds left. 14 enemy fighters. Still bad mathematics, but survivable if they were smart. "I'm not real," she said flatly. "I'm a file marked as seized. No further action. That's why I can do things the living can't. They erased you. They tried." She loaded a fresh magazine. "But you can't erase someone who refuses to stop existing." The Chief Garrett was looking at her with something like awe. "You're her, the one from the stories, the sniper who killed 40 combatants in one night and walked out alone." 43, she corrected. "And I didn't walk out. I crawled out. For 6 kilometers. While they hunted me." "Why are you here?" the team leader asked. "Why risk everything for us?" She turned to look at him. Behind her eyes, he saw something that made him look away, something broken and rebuilt into sharp edges. "Because someone should have come for my team 3 years ago," she said simply. "Nobody did, so I'm making sure somebody comes for yours." A rifle shot cracked in the distance. Rock fragments sprayed near her position. She smiled without warmth. "And now they know I'm here. Time to finish this." The clock on Juliet's watch read 23:47. 13 minutes until Christmas Day. 14 enemy fighters remained. 8 were close enough to be dangerous. 6 were hanging back, probably low on ammunition or courage. She laid out the tactical situation like a surgeon planning an operation. "Here's how this works. They have numbers. We have skill. They're scattered. We're concentrated. They're scared. We're not." Lieutenant Commander Harlow, she'd finally gotten his name, was listening with the intensity of someone watching their salvation or their doom being planned in real time. "I'm going to move to that outcrop." She pointed to a position 50 meters north. "From there, I have clear lines of fire on their probable approach routes. When they move to assault this position, and they will, because they can't let us survive until daylight, I'll cut them down." "And if they rush all at once?" Chief Garrett asked. "Overwhelm your position? Then you shoot the ones I miss." She handed her remaining 2 magazines to Harlow. "This is everything I have left. 24 rounds. Use them only at close range, under 50 meters. Every shot has to count." "What about you?" Webb asked. "How much ammunition do you have?" She patted the magazine in her rifle. "Enough." That wasn't an answer, and they all knew it. "This is insane," Cross said through gritted teeth, tourniquet tight on his leg. "You're going out there alone to fight, God knows how many." "I've done it before." She checked her watch again. 23:49. 11 minutes until midnight. Let's give them a Christmas they won't forget. She moved before anyone could argue. Low and fast, using terrain and darkness. The outcrop was barely cover a tumble of rocks and scrub, but it gave her angles on the approach routes. Through her scope, she watched the enemy force organizing. They'd finally figured out that waiting was costing them more than attacking would. Better to rush the position and take casualties than be picked off one by one in the darkness. She keyed her radio. "Watcher 1. They're coming. Full assault. Maybe 2 minutes. Get your wounded as deep into cover as possible. Everyone else, weapons ready." "Copy." Harlow's voice was steady. "Professional. We're ready." The assault came from 3 directions. Professional, coordinated, 8 fighters moving in fire team formations, covering each other's movement. Juliet let them close to 400 meters before taking her first shot. The lead fighter on the eastern approach dropped. His teammate dove for cover, presenting a perfect target to her second shot. The assault formation broke into chaos for 5 precious seconds while they located her position. 5 seconds where she fired 3 more carefully aimed shots. 3 more fighters down. Then they returned fire. The outcrop exploded in rock fragments and ricochets. She pressed herself flat, waiting for the barrage to pass. When it paused, they had to reload. Eventually, she rose and fired again. And again. Her bolt-action rifle was slower than their automatic weapons. But she only needed 1 shot per target. They needed 30 rounds to find her in the darkness. The mathematics finally favored someone. 6 fighters down, 8 remaining, but now they knew exactly where she was. "Watcher 1, she transmitted calmly. "They're going to flank my position. Watch for movement on your northern sector." "Copy. We see them." 2 fighters moving. The SEAL's transmission was cut off by gunfire. Juliet couldn't see that sector from her position. Couldn't help. Had to trust them. She focused on her own battle. 4 fighters trying to pin her down with suppressing fire while 2 more maneuvered closer. Classic infantry tactics. She shot the ones maneuvering first. Priorities. The ones moving were the immediate threat. Her rifle's bolt locked back. Magazine empty. She dropped the empty mag. Reached for a fresh one. Fingers found nothing. Out of ammunition. The 4 remaining fighters realized she'd stopped shooting. They rose from cover, moving to assault her position. Juliet pulled her sidearm .45 caliber pistol, 12 rounds in the magazine, close-range weapon, against opponents 300 meters away. She smiled grimly. "Well, this is going to be interesting." Then, from the SEAL position, a coordinated burst of fire. Harlow and his team, engaging the 4 fighters from their flank, controlled bursts, precise shooting, professional. 2 fighters dropped. The other 2 turned to face the new threat, exposing themselves to Juliet's position. She stood, pistol up, fired twice at the closer target. The range was absurd for a handgun. The first shot missed. The second hit something the fighter staggered but didn't drop. The SEAL fire finished what she'd started. And then it was quiet, snow falling, wind howling, but no gunfire. Juliet's watch read 23:59. 1 minute until Christmas. She keyed her radio. Watcher 1, status? All threats neutralized. Harlow sounded exhausted. "We're alive. Mills is. Still breathing. Barely." She closed her eyes for a moment. Breathing. Just breathing. 14 enemy fighters dead. 6 Americans alive. The mathematics of violence balanced, finally, in favor of survival. "Watcher 1, she transmitted. Start broadcasting on emergency frequency. All channels. They can't triangulate us now. There's nobody left to triangulate. Get that helicopter inbound." "Copy." Brief pause. "Captain Brennan, thank you." She didn't respond. Couldn't find words. Through the snow, she heard it. Faint at first, then growing louder. The distinctive whump 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 of helicopter rotors. Someone had been listening after all. Christmas miracle, delivered by violence and precision shooting. Her watch clicked over to 0. Christmas Day, she whispered to herself. To the ghosts of her team 3 years dead. See? Someone came for them. Someone always comes. Even if that someone was a ghost herself. The MH-60 Blackhawk settled into the valley like a descending angel, rotors creating a blizzard of snow and debris. Combat medics jumped out before the skids touched ground, moving with practiced urgency toward the SEAL position. Juliet watched from her outcrop, still crouched in the rocks. Her part was done. The living had arrived to save the living. She started breaking down her position, preparing to slip away into the darkness before anyone could ask questions she didn't want to answer. "Captain Brennan!" Harlow's voice cut through the rotor noise. He was standing at the edge of the SEAL position, waving at her. "Come on, we're loading up." She shook her head, gesturing for him to go, but the stubborn man was jogging through the snow toward her position. Behind him, the medics were loading Mills and Cross onto stretchers, moving them toward the helicopter. "Captain, we need to go," Harlow shouted as he reached her position. Up close, she could see he was younger than she thought, maybe 32. Eyes that had seen too much, but still held hope. "You go," she said, her voice flat. "I have a mission to complete." "Negative. You're coming with us." "I can't. I don't exist, remember? Dead 3 years ago, no file, no unit, no record." He grabbed her arm gently, but firmly. "Then, we'll make a new record, create a new file, whatever it takes. You saved 6 American lives tonight. The system doesn't get to erase that. The system already erased me once. It'll do it again. Then I'll spend every day making sure they remember." His voice was intense. "Captain, you think you're the only one who's been thrown away? The only one who's done things that don't exist in any report? We all have ghosts. Difference is, you're still fighting yours alone." She looked at him. Really looked. Saw the determination there. The stubborn refusal to abandon someone who'd saved them. Something cracked inside her, just slightly, just enough. "I appreciate the offer," she said quietly. "But I've been in the shadows too long. The light would just show all the cracks." "Everyone has cracks, Captain. That's how the light gets in." She almost smiled. Almost. The helicopter crew chief was waving frantically, pointing at his watch. The bird couldn't stay on the ground much longer. Too exposed. Too risky. "Go," she said firmly. "Get your wounded to safety. That's the mission." Harlow hesitated, then reached into his tactical vest. He pulled out a small card, his personal information, call signs, encrypted contact protocols. "When you're ready to stop being a ghost," he said, pressing it into her hand. "When you're ready to remember that you're still one of us, call." She took the card, didn't promise anything, couldn't. He nodded once, then jogged back to the helicopter. The SEALs loaded up, medics working frantically on Mills even as the bird lifted off. Through the open door, she saw Harlow looking back at her position. She raised one hand. A brief wave. Acknowledgement. The helicopter banked and disappeared into the darkness, rotors fading to whisper, then silence. Juliet stood alone in the snow. Christmas Day. Official now by 17 minutes. She keyed her radio one last time, transmitting on the emergency frequency where anyone monitoring intelligence agencies, operation centers, anyone who'd been listening to the drama unfold could hear. "Shadowmane, this is undesignated asset." She paused, choosing words carefully. "Mission complete. 6 personnel extracted, 2 requiring urgent surgical intervention but viable. Enemy force neutralized. Area secure for follow-up operations. This frequency going silent." She waited. No response expected, none received. Then, just before switching off the radio, "Tell them," Christmas answered. She powered down the transmitter, shouldered her rifle, and walked into the darkness, leaving only footprints in the snow that the wind would erase within the hour, as if she'd never been there at all. 4 months later. Pentagon, Arlington, Virginia. The classified review board convened in a windowless room 3 levels below the main building. 4 generals, 2 intelligence directors, and 1 civilian oversight official. On the table, after-action reports from the Christmas Eve extraction, SEAL team testimonies, forensic analysis of the battlefield, ballistic reports showing impossible shots made at impossible ranges, and one name that shouldn't exist in any file, Captain Juliet Brennan, service record marked Kia 3 years prior. "Gentlemen," the senior general said, "we have a problem. An operator who officially doesn't exist conducted a solo rescue operation against a numerically superior force and saved 6 American service members. The story is spreading through the special operations community. They're calling her the Christmas Ghost. She violated operational security," one intelligence director said, "revealed herself, used equipment she shouldn't possess, accessed systems she has no clearance for. She also," the civilian official noted dryly, "prevented a catastrophic loss of American lives and potential intelligence compromise. The terrorists would have captured and executed those SEALs, put it on video, used it for recruitment." The second general leaned forward. "Recommendations?" Silence around the table. Finally, the senior general spoke. "She's been in the cold too long. Offer reinstatement, new identity if she wants it, full back pay, counseling, the whole package. And if she refuses?" The general smiled slightly. "Then we do what we should have done 3 years ago. We acknowledge that some operators work best in the shadows. We stop trying to erase them and start supporting them." Quietly, the intelligence director raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting we officially acknowledge an operator who officially doesn't exist?" "I'm suggesting," the general said carefully, "that we maintain a file marked Asset Available, Specialized Operations. No name, no face, just a contact protocol. And when missions come up that require someone who doesn't exist, we know who to call." The motion carried unanimously. Same day. Somewhere in the Austrian Alps, Juliet sat in a small cabin 3,000 meters above sea level, cleaning her rifle. The winter silence was profound, peaceful. Her encrypted satellite phone, the one only 3 people on Earth knew how to reach, buzzed once. A text message, no sender identification, just coordinates, an objective description and a timeline. And at the bottom, Offer still stands. New file approved. Your choice. Harlow. She read it twice, set the phone down, stared out the window at snow-covered peaks. For 3 years, she'd been a ghost, effective, lethal, alone. But on Christmas Eve, for the first time since her team died, she'd felt something crack in the ice around her heart. That moment when Harlow had insisted she was still one of us. Maybe ghosts could come back to life. Maybe files could be rewritten. Maybe redemption wasn't about erasing the past, but about choosing a different future. She picked up the phone and typed a reply. Considering options. Maintaining current status. Merry Christmas. She pressed send, then added one more message. If you ever need Christmas to answer again, you know how to find me. 2 hours later, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Lieutenant Commander Brett Harlow stood in the operations center, watching the message appear on his secure terminal. He smiled, the first genuine smile since returning from that valley. Chief Garrett walked up beside him. She responded, "Yeah, she's still out there, still in the shadows. Think she'll ever come back?" Harlow thought about the woman who'd materialized out of darkness to save them, who'd fought impossible odds with deadly calm, who'd walked away from everything because the system had failed her. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know this. Somewhere out there, on some frozen mountain or in some desert, there's a sniper who refuses to let good people die on Christmas Eve. And that matters." Garrett nodded. "Christmas Ghost. Has a nice ring to it." "It does." Harlow saved the message, then encrypted it into a file marked Specialized Assets, CI, Call Protocols. "Sir?" A young communications specialist approached. "We're getting reports of a hostage situation in the Balkans. American contractors taken by a militia group. No ransom demands. They're just waiting." "Waiting for what?" "Unknown. But intelligence says it's happening near a mountain pass. Remote, difficult terrain." Harlow and Garrett exchanged a look. "Get me satellite imagery of that region," Harlow ordered. "Focus on elevated positions with clear sight lines to the hostage location." "Looking for something specific, sir?" "Yeah." He pulled up the encrypted contact protocol on his terminal. "Looking for a Christmas miracle. Because in the shadows, somewhere, a woman who didn't exist was loading her rifle and checking weather reports. A woman who'd learned that ghosts could still fight, could still save lives, could still matter. And when the call came, and it would come, she'd answer. The way she'd answered on Christmas Eve, with silence, with precision, with deadly competence. The Christmas ghost was real. And somewhere, in the darkest places of the world, people who needed her could still hear her whisper, 'Christmas isn't over yet.'"